Welcome to the Book Brothers podcast. I believe this is episode number 7
Sounds
of the Book
right.
Brothers podcast.
Sounds good to me.
This is the podcast where we talk about books and writing and all things related to literary genius. Speaking of literary genius, we have a very special topic today because Mr. David Cardoso here, my co-host, aka Baby Sagan on the internet, recently wrote, or excuse me, recently released his book, Project Red Planet. There it is on the screen right there. And there it is on the
I have a
printout.
little flyer.
You
I gave up my two copies. I had author copies, but I do have a
know,
flyer here. So there you
you,
go.
you'll find this on your nearest telephone pole
Yes.
in a neighborhood near you. No, but hey, congratulations again.
Thank you.
Formally, I wanted to congratulate you on
Yeah.
releasing your book. I mean, this is a big milestone for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
give us some context though, because you mentioned one time that you've been working on this for the better part of 10 years. Tell me
Yeah.
about that. Was that like on and off for 10 years, like
Yes.
consistently
Yeah.
for 10 years? What's the story? What's the lore
The
there?
lore of Project Red Planet. Okay, the lore of Project Red Planet, this crazy book that I wrote, just released on Amazon, as Adrian said. Yeah, the lore of Project Red Planet. So I've always liked science fiction. I started writing a lot when I was in college because I was an English major. So naturally, as I read more and wrote more, I really discovered my love of like creative writing. So it kind of really began like at Sac State when I went to Sac State, probably like my second, third year, I started writing like short stories. And anyway, the story was I just kept writing and writing, and eventually I had written a chapter. I started writing on the conspiracy, the moon landing. I've always been interested in conspiracies, like the moon landing, especially like the big one, the biggest conspiracy of them all. Um, and I just wrote this chapter on the moon landing, and it was pretty good. So you've read it, Adrian. So you know it begins with like the moon landing, and the first part, the opening of the book is all serious. But then I was like, well, it's fine, but I don't want to just write about the moon landing. And then I just wrote a funny line, and I wrote cut. Like I just wrote that line cut, and I was like, oh wait, I'll just do a book about like the moon landing, and it's like all faked. And so that's how it began. But I had no idea where this thing was going. Which you may have noticed if you read the book, like even though it does flow well now, like a lot of ideas in there, and that's how it began. Though was just this random idea, and it was really funny to me, and it kind of stood out as like having this like moment, almost like I liken it to pulling the rug out of someone of the reader, like they're reading, and then I pull the rug out from under them, and I feel like I like doing that a lot in my writing. And that's how it began. And then from there, it just like, I wanted random scenes. And then I was like, oh, and now I gotta have aliens in it. And the aliens are gonna be pissed about this movie. And then there's gotta be an alien crash landing. And then there's gotta be, actors for this film. So then I started coming up with the actors. And then, of course, it became very political. So then it's like, then I want the president. I'm gonna make fun of the president. So I start throwing in all these different ideas. And I think we talked about it too in an earlier podcast, Adrian, but how I write out of order. And so that's kind of how it came together, where I wanted these different conspiracies. So then I had the reptilians as politicians. The president is a reptilian for, spoiler alert for everyone. It's pretty early in the book, but as Adrian found out. But yeah, that's kind of how it began. It was a very like natural process, very brainstormy. But yeah, I just kind of wrote random scenes on kind of following that kind of trajectory. Um, and then the Greys and Reptilians kind of came with it. But yeah, that's kind of the initial idea of it. I don't know if you want to add any other questions, Adrian, if you had other details to add to it.
That makes so much sense, just in the sense of like writing doesn't always have to be linear, right? And it's not
Yeah.
always linear anyway. And
No.
John August, who's a very well-known screenwriter who hosts the very famous screenwriting podcast Script Notes, he always says the next thing you should write is just the one you want to write. Like he's like, I write out of
Yeah.
order all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember when I first heard him say that, I thought that was crazy because I'm
Yeah.
like, I guess we think too linearly, right? Because we read the stories linearly, but doesn't mean you
Hmm.
have to write them linearly. So it's interesting to hear that's
Yeah,
what your
I think
process is like.
yeah, I think we have the benefit too of like just our entertainment culture. So we're surrounded by pop culture all the time. So like I knew I wanted to do like an Area 51 scene, kind of like what that author was talking about, where it's like, oh, I gotta have Area 51 in there. That's the scene I want to write. So I did that. that was pretty early in the book. The presidential scenes were kind of early, especially like in the bunker. I knew the characters were gonna go into a bunker and there's gonna be a fight with the president. I knew that was gonna happen. That scene was gonna happen. So there's lots of scenes that kind of pop out to you, and I kind of follow that with the book. And it became this ridiculous, fun, sci-fi. But yeah, like that's just how I write, and that's how the book kind of came to fruition. But it really began with, I would say, the moon landing. And that was actually a difficulty early on in the book where I knew it was going to be like about the moon landing conspiracy, but then I didn't want it to be set. For a while, I had to fight with myself where I was like, well, is it in 1969? Am I going to do a moon landing conspiracy or am I going to do a future conspiracy? And that's why I ended up doing the prologue and then doing like the premise of the book. Project Red Planet is, they make a film for the Martian landing, so that is also faked. So for the audience,
Directed by totally not Christopher Nolan.
yes, not Christopher Nolan, obviously not.
Um,
But yeah, so like I had to make that decision of like, oh, is this the moon landing or is this going to be the Mars landing? And I decided with the Mars landing to make it a modern, contemporary conspiracy. So
were there long stretches of time where you put the book down where you weren't working on it? And
yeah,
how
yeah,
long
yeah.
was that longest stretch of time?
The longest stretch would be like 6 months, like where I just had to stop. But that was almost like where the book was like I would say I was probably two-thirds done, where I had like a lot of pieces already written, but I didn't know how to finish it. I struggled with the finish for a while. And just other details like I don't like editing at all. But I had to edit my own. Like, I had an editor help me, Kelly Malone. She's really great, but like she did the bulk of the work, but I had to do a lot of like editing myself, and so that took me a long time. Where I had been working on it for so many years that I kind of just needed that break. And I would recommend that to writers too. I'm sure you would too, Adrian, where it's just like sometimes you just need that break. Like, um, yeah, because this has been for like a decade off and on, and the longest break was 6 months.
Yeah.
But sometimes there was like months here and there. This sometimes be like a month or two. But I would say early on, like the first 5, 6 years, I was pretty consistent. Like maybe like a week or two would go by without working on it, but. I would always like piece things together, like, oh, that chapter, I want to fix that up. And, I was very particular and definitely a perfectionist with this book, which I recommend writers avoid perfectionism because there's no such thing. Just do the best that you can and have as much fun as you can with it.
Yeah. You touched on a couple of things there. Yeah, on the rare occasion that I finish something, I have
Mhm.
to put it away for a while and then because when you come back to it, you see all the cracks. You see all
Yeah.
the things that you need to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
on, like
Yeah.
the big stuff, not like,
Yeah.
small little like
For
grammatical
sure.
things or whatever,
Yeah.
but like big picture stuff. You really start to get a feel for like what works and what doesn't work after you've
Yeah.
like put it in a shelf or put it in a
Yeah.
drawer away for a while. And yeah,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
far as just perfectionism is the killer of creativity, as they say. And that's why,
Yeah.
like, I'm of the mind of like just do a trash draft or a vomit draft, whatever you
Hmm.
want to call
Hmm.
it,
Yeah.
because a bad finished script or book, for example, is better than an unfinished book or an unfinished
Yeah.
script.
Yeah.
Because when you have something that's finished, even if it's bad, and it's probably going to be bad, your first draft, you
Hmm.
know, there's opportunity to make it better. So that's
Yeah.
what
For
they
sure.
say. That's where the real work begins, is in the edit, right? It's in the going back and
Yeah,
uh,
especially for a writer like me, when I write out of order, like I talked about, like you definitely need to edit quite a bit more. Because yeah, you're trying to find all your main, in my book in Red Planet, as you discovered, Adrian, it's an ensemble cast too. So I had a lot of characters. So
yeah,
it follows many different characters. Like Neil's the main character, but there's also Von Geiger, there's Elle, the speechwriter.
yeah,
Um, I have
um,
lots of side characters too, I even give
yeah.
them chapters here and there too. So like
Dick
I have a lot.
Gorgeous.
Yes, there's Dick
Which, by
Gorgeous.
the way, I know this is supposed to be a
Fun
family-friendly
names.
show, but you have a character in your book called
Yeah,
Dick
Dick
Gorgeous,
Gorgeous. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. That's a family
he's an
yeah.
actor, but a very specific type
Yes.
of actor, which we don't
Yes, we can
have to
all.
necessarily get into.
Yeah, yeah. We can all guess what that is, but yeah, he's not in the book. He is a blockbuster character. Kind of like I kind of envision like Duke Nukem or like Johnny Bravo when I wrote him. To be honest with you, it's
It's so funny
like
you say
kind of
that because
like
I was picturing Walton Goggins the whole
I know
time.
you said that. Yeah, Walton
Walton
Goggins. Yeah,
Goggins in some silver
could be.
spandex, like
Yeah,
spank
it could
shorts,
work.
spank pants, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah, I think that could
and
work.
yeah,
Potentially.
just his bare muscular chest.
Yeah.
It's a very homoerotic novel. No, I'm just kidding. It's a good no, it's a funny character, but
Yeah.
Von Geiger, I think for me is the funniest character. I'm curious to know, David, how did you come up with Von Geiger?
Oh, Von Geiger, the ufologist. Well, that was a natural, he was a natural fit. So I knew once I had aliens and they crash landed and everything, then I knew I was going to have a ufologist. First in mind, when I had a ufologist character, I was like, well, I'm gonna make fun of this whole field and have a ridiculous ufologist character. I was thinking of, the History Channel, like that crazy guy with the crazy
Oh yeah,
hair,
yeah,
Papadopoulos guy. I had
yeah.
that guy in mind. But I know there was another book written by, I think his name was Von Daniken. He's a ufologist guy, and he believes that, the ancient alien theory and everything. And so I had this Von Daniken character, and he's European. I don't think he's German, but so I had him in mind actually, because he's been on interviews. His name is Von Daniken. I think he's still alive, but he's written like many UFO books, and he wrote The Chariot of the Gods. That's the book that he's famous for. The Chariot of the Gods. That's the book. But anyway, I had this Von Daniken character, and I don't know if he's German. He might be, but he's European. And I was like, I'm gonna have a European crazy ufologist character, just like that guy. And initially, when I wrote him, this is how crazy, how creative and weird I think. I was gonna have a character that's like, he's just kind of vaguely European, and I was gonna have like different languages and different accents for him.
That would have worked. I would have
Like,
found that pretty
kind
good.
of random, kind of like you don't know
Yeah,
where he's from, but he speaks lots of different like European
yeah.
languages. But because it was so much of a struggle for me, I don't speak German, but I had to research all my German in here because I put a lot of little German lines
See,
in there.
I thought you were gonna
So,
make him Portuguese,
oh, okay.
but you don't even speak Portuguese
I
either,
don't speak
right?
Portuguese. I do know the language a little bit more, so that would have
Your
been more
parents
helpful
speak
for
it,
me
right?
naturally. My dad does. My
Your
dad is
dad
fluent.
does. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have
Uh,
helped me more if I did Portuguese because I know some words already,
yeah, because
but
Portugal's a European country, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. But I
You
just feel
never
like
hear too
German,
much about Portugal. You notice that? You always hear from the
that's
French
true.
and the Italians and the
Yeah,
You never hear a peep from like, are you guys
not
just a
really.
quiet people over there? Like, what's going on?
I
What are
guess
you guys
so.
hiding in
I
Portugal?
guess we had our heyday back when we were like
Conquering the world?
yeah, colonizing and enslaving people back in the 1500s, I guess that was our heyday, but I
I
don't
think
know.
so.
But
Well,
Portugal is a very small country, so I feel like German too, like German for me is like very over the top. It's very loud and like that's the kind of cliche that Americans have. And so I think it fit well with the book where, so he was the kind of that over the top perfect kind of German character that I could have fun with I always imagine, I think we envision like the certain German dictators, yelling and screaming. We have that in our minds. And so I think that kind of played into my thinking with him as well. He's just loud and he's like
yeah.
charismatic and crazy. So
Well, you describe him as kind of a big chubby dude. And
yeah.
I don't know why I pictured Brendan Gleeson. Do you know who Brendan Gleeson is? The actor.
Gleason.
I always cast movies in
Yeah, I
my
think I
head.
do. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been in a lot. He's a lot. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was in
Yeah.
Banshees of Inisherin. He was in that Tom Cruise movie, Live, Die, Repeat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see that one where he's like the general guy that sends Tom Cruise to?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
saw that one.
Brandon
That's
Gleeson.
pretty good
He's
one.
Irish. He's an Irish actor,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
he's
he's
pretty
kind of
big.
he's a big guy, and I don't know why I
He
just
could he
pictured.
could work. He could work as a Von Geiger for
Yeah.
sure.
I always like I said, I always like to cast. I cast Tom Holland as Neil and Florence Pugh
Okay.
as Elle or Ellie. It's
L. L.
Elle,
Yeah, like L. Yeah.
and the woman from Community. The what's her name? The character. I'm totally spacing on her name, but I think you describe her as a black woman,
Yeah,
Von
June.
Geiger's wife,
His wife, yeah, yeah.
June. Yeah.
June in the book, yeah.
So the black woman from uh, Community. Forget her.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know
Her,
her
that
name.
actress.
Okay, that
That's
actress.
it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I know, Adrian, you like to cast characters a lot, but I don't think of the cast while I'm reading. I kind of think about that after,
I have to because
So
I'm a
yeah,
very
interesting.
visual,
Yeah, yeah,
person. So I
yeah. Me
have
too. Yeah.
to uh like what do they look like and what do they sound like? And
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
so it's like a shorthand for me because that's just
Yeah.
that's how my brain operates.
Yeah. Everyone's a
Um
little different on that, but yeah.
Yvette Nicole Brown is who I'm thinking about. Yvette Nicole Brown is the
Okay. Okay.
yeah, she would be perfect for Von Geiger's wife, June,
Yeah, she
right?
she has a smaller role, but she is pretty funny. Her
Yeah.
interactions with Scott Geiger are pretty ridiculous, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, you have a whole
Um,
running gag with the German potato pancakes. The how do
Yes,
you
I know
say it, by the way? I can't say
you
that
were
word.
big on those potato
I
pancakes,
really
and
well. I was hungry the whole
I
time.
know when I was writing, I was like, I gotta have some of this stuff, like
Yeah,
yeah, it's a Kartoffelpuffer. So
Kartoffelpuffer.
Kartoffelpuffer,
That see,
Kartoffelpuffer.
that's your stunt marketing right there, bro. You gotta
Yeah,
go to diners
yeah,
and you
yeah.
gotta stand
For sure.
outside and make
Kartoffelpuffer.
Kartoffelpuffer and have
Yeah, yeah.
copies of your book
Also,
ready
the
to go.
name, like, it's funny about Kartoffelpuffer. When I was writing the book, I needed a funny German name of a food that sounded ridiculous, and I was like, that's like a perfect name for the book, because I have so many like funny names in the book that I don't know. I always pride myself on coming up with a funny name, and I think Kartoffelpuffer really stands out. And it's a real food, so it's even better.
Yeah, I had to Google it because I was like, "There's no
Yeah,
way this is
yeah, yeah,
real." Like,
yeah. It is.
I
It's
thought
real.
you made it up. I was like, "He
No,
totally made this up." No, but it's real.
it's real. Yeah,
It
yeah.
looks
Real thing.
delicious. Like
Yeah.
if you look
It
on
does. It looks
the
really good too.
internet, it looks
Yeah,
like a yeah, it's like a potato hash brown looking crispy golden
yeah.
brown thing. Like
Looks
man,
delicious. Yeah.
with the side of applesauce, I believe is what they serve it
Yeah,
with.
I think it's usually applesauce. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
German
avoid
potato
other
pancakes.
whatever else
And
you
they
want
say
on there.
Europeans don't make good food.
I know.
There's your
I don't know
answer
what they're
right
talking
there.
about.
What's a
Yeah.
famous Portuguese dish now that we're on the topic? I never heard of
Uh,
Portuguese food, like what does Portuguese
Yeah, I
food look
mean,
like?
it's a lot of mix of like pork and fish, a lot of codfish. There's
A lot of
actually a
codfish.
dish called bacalhau. I mean, it's codfish, but it's basically codfish with potatoes and olive oil in like a big dish. And
That sounds really good.
it's actually really good. Yeah, it's like a
Rice? Is there any
typical
rice in that bad boy?
not on that one. There's just potato, fish, olives, olive oil, a lot of olive oil.
A lot of olive
She's
oil.
about olive oil. A lot of
Yeah.
potatoes, a lot of beans, like just the fava beans soup.
And a nice
Um,
Chianti to go with
nice
it.
Chianti. Yeah.
Um, no, this is great. So Von Geiger, yeah, he's such
Yes.
a
Anyway,
big
yeah.
character.
Yeah, that's why I come up with Von Geiger, and he's pretty ridiculous. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, Adrian. So, what did you think of the book? You actually read it. You were the first official reader of the finished book. I had many early readers with like the manuscripts that wasn't quite finished yet, but you were the first official one to finish the whole thing as
Yeah.
it is. So, what are your
Well,
thoughts on my novel, my crazy novel?
as I've said, it's a very fun story.
Yeah.
I like satire. I like goofy humor. I like irreverent humor.
Mhm.
And this reminded me a lot. I think when in the beginning I felt like, yeah, I could see the Douglas Adams,
Uh-huh.
you know, um, inspiration.
Inspiration.
But
Yeah.
then, like, as I read on, it felt like that, and also like a Mel Brooks type of movie mixed with like a little bit of like Monty Python type humor. I feel like you have a
Okay.
very Monty Python-esque style of humor in this story.
Okay. Yeah.
And I love Monty Python. I haven't
Yeah.
seen all the
Yeah.
movies or all the
Mhm.
sketches, but I've seen enough to know their sense of humor.
Yeah.
And like I said, I really enjoy satire, and it's almost like it's kind of interesting that you released it in the current political climate that we're in,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
as you said, you satirize like politics and the president and all that, not in
Yeah.
like a super like hit you over the head with it kind of way, but just in a very goofy way. I
Yeah.
like the idea. I love the idea that the president is a
Yeah.
lizard person.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I thought that was great because you have like three factions in this book. You have the moon aliens who are called the Greys.
Grays. Yeah, the
You
Grays.
have the
Yeah.
humans, which are Neil and Elle
Yeah.
and Von
Human. Yeah.
Geiger, and
Earthlings.
then
Yeah.
you have the lizard people
The
who are
reptile.
actually Martians or newfound Martians. I think
Sort of newfound. Yeah, it's kind of implied. Like
they
I had some maps
colonized Mars
where
at
they
some point,
colonized Mars. They took over
and all
Mars.
the
The
native
Martians there,
Martians
but
were gone,
yeah,
right?
yeah, they
Yeah,
left. Yeah, they left pretty much.
yeah.
And at the end, have a cool species too called the Skeptoids,
The
which people,
skeptoids.
which are pretty fun.
The
But they
skept.
come
No,
in. They,
okay. So the skeptoids, I thought was the best part of the book. When I got to it
okay.
at the end,
Okay.
I'd wish you'd set it up more in the beginning, just only because
Yeah.
like I thought it was such an interesting,
Yeah.
unique species that I wanted to know
Yeah.
more about them in a way.
Yeah.
But what was your purpose for the skeptoids? Because the skeptoids are like these sort of super high intelligent beings, right?
Yeah, well, the Skeptoids. Well, I'm a science lover, as you know, Adrian.
Are
Babysitting for
you?
people, so in case you didn't know, I got my freaking star tie over here, my planet tie right here.
That's perfect.
Yeah, but
It's not a
yeah,
clip
me
on,
the
is it?
science.
Is that a real
No, no,
tie?
it's a real tie. It's a real, see, it goes all the way
I'm
around.
just giving you a
Yeah.
hard time.
It
But so
goes
yeah,
all the
tell me
way
about the
around. It's
skeptoids.
tight right here. Yeah, the Skeptoids. But yeah, me being the science guy that I am, and science teacher as well.
Mm,
Skepticism and critical thinking is a big part. And so I wanted an alien species that like embody that, where they were like ridiculously like over the top with their skepticism, where they're so skeptical they don't even know if they exist. Which I thought was
yeah.
just funny. They're very philosophical at the same time, and there's some like kernel of truth to what they say, but also it's like they're just ridiculous and they're so skeptical. They float in and out of existence.
Yeah.
But I just like the idea of like at the end, since there's so many conspiracies in the book, that I like the idea of them trying to like, bring logic to Earth, as it were. They try to bring logic to species and critical thinking and skepticism. And I just always love that idea. And I kind of figure they're the scientists of the stars. They could definitely have their own book. And, I thought about doing like a short story with them as well, because they're like one of my favorites too. But yeah,
You
actually,
know who I envisioned for the skeptoids?
what's
Did you
up?
ever see AI, artificial intelligence?
Yeah, yeah,
Remember at the end where they dig them
mhm.
up,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
advanced
Those weird aliens.
computer
Yeah,
aliens dig them
yeah,
up?
yeah. Mhm.
That's who I pictured.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
translucent,
Yeah, some
you know,
weird. They're really tall too.
beings,
They're like super
really
tall.
tall,
Yeah.
really skinny,
Yeah.
and they're just neurons. They're just
Kind of.
brain
Yeah, yeah.
matter
They're just like
firing back and
brain. Yeah,
forth.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And
It's kind of like that. Yeah. That kind of
yeah.
works. I like that visual.
The whole book culminates into a big third act set piece where they go to Mars first. They
Mm.
somehow make it to Mars
Make,
using
yep.
some portal thing that Von
Yeah.
Geiger has or
Mm.
had.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact mechanics of it, but they get to Mars, they meet the skeptoids,
Hmm.
and then they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to bomb Earth, not with traditional
Yes.
incendiary bombs, mind you. We're going to
Yeah.
bomb Earth with logic bombs,
Yes.
which is,
Yes.
I did laugh out loud when I got to that part
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I
I
thought,
hope
oh,
so.
he's just messing around now at this point. Oh no, he is serious. He's really going to do that. And you
Yeah.
know what? It actually kind of works because it subverted my expectations. I thought you were
Yeah.
going to carpet bomb DC and kill the lizard people or something,
Okay. Yeah,
but you
yeah.
completely subverted my expectations,
Okay.
and
That's good.
and you went a different route. So I applaud
Okay.
you for that,
Yeah.
for the logic bombs,
Yeah.
because obviously at this day and age we could use a lot more
Yeah.
critical thinking and logic,
Yeah.
forward
I was
thinking.
just having fun with that. I was like, well, education's nice, but how about if we just had logic bombs? I mean, just bomb everyone to become more logical. And then, of course, at the end, not everyone becomes logical, right away. Or, maybe there's I kind of hint at towards the end that, maybe people are becoming slowly more logical, critical thinkers, but it's like a slow process. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty
You
fun.
needed to enrich the bombs with more logic
I guess,
powder
I guess,
in order for them
I'm
to
not sure. Something like that.
to take effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. As far as my thoughts, yeah, going back to that, like I said, it's a very. I don't want to give too much away, by the way, because we want people to read the book.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
it's fun though. Yeah.
but no, I had a good time reading it. It goes in a lot of really weird directions that
Hmm.
again sort of helped subvert my expectations, and I think you did a good job with like. I never knew where you were going. Let me just say that.
Okay. Yeah.
And I,
That's
and
kind of,
I say that in a positive way,
yeah.
mind you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I was going to ask you that too, is like, I think that's one thing that while I was writing it, there's so many ideas in it, which I'm very like happy about, but it's almost like, I kind of feel like in the end, like this book has so many different ideas. Like you can make different books on each theme or
Oh
element,
yeah,
have lots of different characters, and that could be
yeah.
its own story. That could be its own story, which I like, and they kind of like fuse
I
together.
pitched you my idea for your offshoot book, Project
Right.
Hot
Was
Planet,
Oh yeah,
where,
was it
where
gorgeous
men
like
are
Dick
from
Gorgeous
Mars,
or
women are from
whatever?
Venus. Yeah, and they go to
Yeah.
Venus.
Oh no, wait. There was that, and then there was also you were interested in Von Geiger, like having a Von Geiger like
Yeah, like
his
a
own
Von.
side
You could
adventure.
easily do a Von Geiger novella, like
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
a young Von Geiger
Yeah.
gallivanting around the
Right.
Southwest U.S. with June, trying to
Hmm.
find, evidence of
Yeah.
extraterrestrial
Yeah.
life or something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Something short, like a 100-page novella of Von
Yeah.
Geiger. But
Like Von Geiger could be have lots of his own like previous adventures. Like he'd be fun because he's written so many books too. So I could be like, oh yeah, he wrote this book like 3 years ago when he this
yeah,
adventure, he found this alien craft or whatever.
he could be on a book tour,
Yeah. Yeah. There
trying to
you
trying
go.
to uncover the secrets of
Yeah.
alien life or whatever.
Yeah. All the government cover
Um,
up. Yeah.
yeah, that was good stuff. But I was gonna say, yeah, Project Hot Planet. See, that's dual layers right there because Venus is a hot planet, but it's
I don't
also
know
filled with
Venus
hot
maybe.
babes. and
Yeah.
then here come all the men to ruin their good time, right? So like you
Like
could really
boy just
go
comes
like
in.
a
Yeah.
satirical like
I
men
guess.
just
Yeah.
ruin everything kind of a vibe, you
Sort
know?
of, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I
I
could
think
do
that'd
it.
be
Could be an easy,
hilarious.
it
If
could
I
be an
write
easy.
that, you'll have to give. I'll give you royalties if I write
Okay.
it. So,
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
but no, you can. Yeah, you can do a lot of. You can go in a lot of directions with. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say I didn't. The ending didn't necessarily make me feel like you left it open for a sequel. But do you feel like you did?
I mean, I wanted to close it off, but at the same time, so I closed off like probably like most of the plot, I would say. But of course, you could always make a sequel of anything. I mean, like we were talking, you can begin with, for people who want to read the book, but you can like start with, Neil again, start what happens. Like in my mind, he like doesn't want to be an actor anymore, kind of thing after what happened, At least that's my vision, as the writer. Um,
Yeah,
but I never had a vision. I always wanted to finish this book and make it a full like story. Especially with Ort, you'll see his character, what happens with Ort, the crazy. He's one of the main characters and he's
the one of
ridiculous.
the Greys, one of the Moon
Yeah,
aliens.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I definitely feel like it's definitely an end. I would say Von Geiger probably has the best chance to just continue on, doing his thing. Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I said, there's so many directions you can take it in.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I did have this idea for a spiritual successor, which was there's actually a scene in Area 51 when some of the Greys are talking Ort and Kep, and then they meet a Martian. And I don't know if you remember this scene, Adrian, but I'll bring it up now. But there's a Martian there, and this Martian's name was Vidal, I believe. And they're talking about um, just some of the pat like the this is me throwing in every conspiracy, talking about how the Orson Welles, like the Martian fiasco from the
yeah.
1930s, when the people freaked out that they thought a Martian was landing or whatever. And in fact, a Martian actually did land in the boat.
Right.
But
Yeah.
anyway, that alien that's talking about, he's pissed with H.G. Wells because he wrote War of the Worlds. And so I was like, well, there's another spiritual successor is I could do Vidal's story and have him come down to Earth because he wants to stop the selling of H.G. Wells. He wants to like burn books or something like that. I thought that'd be a funny idea to have like an alien that wants to destroy literature.
That's like a Fahrenheit 451 type
Yeah.
of thing.
But
Satire
he
right
he
there.
comes down to destroy like the Earthling literature because he's pissed at Earthlings for writing bad mouthing Martians basically. So it's kind of another Ort kind of idea. So that was like a spiritual successor idea to Red Planet that I played with for a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to see a book where, and maybe there is already a book like this. I want to see a book where we open on an alien planet and everyone's, it's a utopia.
Hmm.
Everyone's getting along, there's no starvation, nobody's homeless, there's no violence because it's a utopia. And then a spaceship enters the atmosphere and the invaders are human beings. You know what I mean?
And
Like
they
I
cause
want to see a
the chaos.
reverse alien
Oh,
invasion
reverse.
story
Okay.
where the humans are the what do you
Yeah.
call it?
Actually, speaking of
The bad
that.
hombres.
The bad guys. Speaking of that, you actually brought up that's a good plot point, but um it sounds a lot like a book that I had on my shelf that I haven't read yet. It's by Arthur C. Clarke. It's called The Songs of Distant Earth.
Mm,
And it kind of sounds like that idea because there's these other beings that they're on another planet, and then the Earthlings come and visit, and people haven't been to Earth in a long
yeah.
time, and the Earthlings come and visit, and something happens, and it sounds like the planet is a utopia, so it kind of sounds like a similar idea
I
to
mean, you
Earth.
could you could really get satirical with it in the sense of like
Oh
the
yeah,
invading humans don't bring weapons, they don't bring bombs. You know what they bring is capitalism. And then that's what
yeah, there you go.
destroys the,
Time for
the
money,
alien
everyone. Let's
planet.
make some paper
That's
money.
their biggest weapon is
Yeah,
capitalism.
maybe.
Never
Yeah,
mind. You don't need to drop a single bomb or fire a
probably
single
not.
bullet or laser bolt, whatever you want to
No.
call it.
Yeah.
Um, but
So we're
no,
just
but
we're gonna advertise to everyone as a good
yeah.
endless ads.
Actually, we should turn this podcast into a writing progress. Like day one, fleshing out the story, and then
Oh
until
yeah,
see
we
it
could
all
do
the way
that.
through the
We
end.
could yeah, we could like write our own book and then like talk about the progress of it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Um, Another question about Project Red Planet I wanted to ask you. What did you think of? So it is very satirical, it's very funny, it's very humorous. What did you think of the writing style though? Did you like the writing itself? Did you think it was like really good? Did you think it was okay? Like
Well, I,
be
I will
honest
be
with
honest with you.
Yeah.
I brought this up over text with you at one point.
Yeah.
I said, um, what's with the POV switching in every
Oh
chapter?
yeah. Yeah.
And you justified it pretty well, I thought. But that was the one thing for me that kind of threw me off a little bit was
Okay.
the POV switching because
Mhm.
when you read about writing a novel, the biggest thing that I've read personally is don't POV switch within the same chapter unless it's like absolutely like necessary. There's a reason you can justify it, whatever.
Okay.
You should stick to doing POV switching between chapter to chapter. And I assume that's what everybody just does. So when I was reading your
Yeah.
book and I noticed that, I was like, wait a minute, we're in L's head, but now we're in Neil's, but now we're in
Yeah.
Von Geiger's, but now, so like I think, and I brought it up with you, and I remember I
Mhm.
can't remember what you said exactly, but do you remember what you said? Because I'm curious to.
For me, it's just an ensemble book. So, like, since I had so many characters, I never really. I think it was also omniscient. So I have omniscient narrator in there. So the narrator comes in and makes some, sarcastic, funny jabs once in a while as well throughout the book. So, like, since I had omniscient narrator as well as ensemble cast, I was okay with just jumping around throughout. Um, as far as like the sticking with like one character's thoughts and ideas, like. You're talking about like for each chapter, right? So like this is a Von Geiger chapter, this is the Neil chapter, like that, right?
Yeah,
Jumping around to other people's emotions or thoughts or
yeah,
whatever.
and it's not a concrete rule. You can jump around between POVs within a chapter,
Yeah.
but I think it's the way you do it. Like if you do it too much, too
Hmm.
fast, it might be well, it is
Okay.
disorienting.
Okay. I see.
And
Yeah.
I don't think yours was disorienting, but I wasn't expecting that.
I see.
So I was like, wait a minute.
May take a
Is this
while. Yeah.
Ort
Okay.
talking or is this Neil talking? So, but I got used to it
Okay.
as I went on.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I think I can understand that, especially there's a lot of, and I
Yeah.
do throw in a lot of jokes and that there's, a ton of
Yeah.
humor.
The whole,
So it's,
your writing
yeah.
itself isn't bad.
Yeah.
The prose isn't bad. But,
Hmm.
you're not, I like straightforward prose. I feel like sometimes I read books where I'm like, like everything is symbolic.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, she stood up like a broken flower, uh, breezing in the wind, but still fighting against it with the petals. All, you know
Uh-huh.
what I mean? Like
Too
that
much.
kind of prose I hate.
Too flowery. Okay.
And that's why I like
Well,
the Expanse novels because the Expanse novels are pretty straightforward. It's
okay.
nothing fancy. It's not fancy prose. It's just
Yeah.
straightforward. This is what's going on. This is what the
Yeah.
character's thinking. And
Hmm.
you did that, and I appreciated that because you know I feel like some writers try too hard when it
Okay.
comes to the prose.
Well, I
Uh,
definitely feel like I go back and forth between that. Like I have moments of like, it's pretty standard, I guess you could say, and then I get pretty flowery, pretty ridiculous because like it is, I do make it pretty humorous. So
yeah,
I
yeah, and it
like I
was
like the
humorous.
flowery. I do like the flowery prose
Yeah,
myself, but
yeah,
I definitely emphasize trying to flow with the writing as much as I could because as I reread it, I try to make that story flow as much as I could.
yeah,
Um, But I could see the POV jumping being an issue,
yeah.
going forward in future writing, I'll have to like consider that.
I think people will get used to that. And
Yeah.
and everyone has to find their voice. And like if that's your voice, if that's your style, if that's your signature way of writing, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for me, like I feel like I like a lot of idioms. So like I like to say things like, a bull in China shop or something like that, something
Okay.
silly. Like
Yeah.
I like to make analogies. So like, I could see that being like part of your style of writing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
like I said, purple prose annoys me, and
Okay.
I just prefer like straightforward. Even Stephen King, in his famous book on writing, said
Yeah.
sometimes a shovel is just a shovel.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes a ball is just a ball. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to go on this big grand explanation of what something is. If it's a baseball bat to the head, it's a baseball bat to the head. I think we'll know what that means, right? If you're taking a
Yeah. Yeah.
baseball bat to the noggin,
Right.
we as the
Yeah.
reader understand,
Mhm.
yeah, that's not good. Like you don't have to
That was
tell
great.
me,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. No, I get
physics
that.
behind it and in the flowery, sort of way. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, no, your writing is good, and I can tell that I can tell you put a lot of work into this because it is a lot of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
any book is a lot of work, but
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think
nobody half-asses a book, right? Like even bad books. Like you think of the worst book you've ever read,
I don't know if
right?
I'd
And
say
I've read a
that.
few. Even the
I'm sure there's
worst
a
books
handful, but
even the worst books I've ever read
oh
took a
yeah. I
lot of
mean,
work
yeah,
for
yeah.
someone to make.
Even
I
like
can't emphasize.
we're going to talk about Brave New World coming up on the next podcast, but like
Oh yeah.
we would agree
You
is like
want some
it's
Soma?
shorter. It's shorter. Yeah, it's shorter and it's not like as dense as a lot of other books, but like his writing style, like I think we both agreed, like it's just not up to
Yeah.
par with what we thought. So like,
Yeah, and we'll get into that.
yeah, we can talk about that,
It
but
was sort of reminding me of I'm trying to look at the my bookshelf. What's his name? Vonnegut. But Vonnegut is a good writer, and the way
Vonnegut a lot better
he
though.
writes in
Yeah.
short little fragments a
Yeah.
lot, but
Yeah.
they're funny
It's very
and they
clear. It's very
work.
clear, concise, funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Aldous Huxley,
Aldous
Aldous
Huxley.
Huxley, um, yeah, we'll get into it. This is
Yeah.
about Project Red Planet, so let's
We'll
get
talk about Aldous Huxley coming up, but we'll talk
yeah.
about my book right now. Oh, by the way, also I did use a pseudonym for the book too. That's one thing I want to
David
say.
Angelo, yeah.
I use David Angelo. The reason I came up with David Angelo, here's the name right here.
Is that your what is that? Like your maiden name? I don't know.
No, no, no. Hey man.
Is that your
No, but
yeah.
David Angelo, the reason I came up with that is at my previous job, I was actually showing off the manuscript to Project Red Planet like some years ago. And
Mm.
one of the guys there was like, "Oh, this is really good." He was like impressed with it. And he's like, he started, "I'm gonna call you like Da Vinci. You're like Da Vinci." And he's like, "No, Michelangelo, David Angelo. That's good." And he came out with David Angelo. So it was like a Michelangelo, David Angelo thing. It was a fusion. And I liked the name. And he just kind of would say it once in a while. I was like, "David Angelo, what's up?" And so like I just stuck. So
That works because it's short. It's shorter than
yeah,
Cardoso. Cardoso is a great
yeah,
name, by the way.
yeah. It's a
Very
solid name.
Portuguese.
Yeah, it is super Portuguese.
But Angelo has got like it could be
It's a
you
good
could be
name.
Italian, you could be
Yeah,
Spanish, you could
yeah.
be
Could be Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, Spanish
So
and Portuguese right there. So, you know.
that adds a little diversity
Yeah,
to your
yeah.
pen name.
Speaking of that, for your writing, Adrian, are you going to stick with your name, Delatorre? Because that's a good last name
I
too.
think I
You're going
am.
to stick
Yeah,
with that as
well,
a
I think I am because yeah, I do like my last name, and
okay. Yeah.
if I was in an alternate timeline, it really would be an author's name. You know what I mean? The
Yeah,
latest sci-fi
Delatorre is a
novel
good last
by
name. I had
Adrian
there was
de
like
la
a couple.
Torre.
Yeah, there's like I've always heard like some kids like there's always whatever school you go to, there's always kids with the name Delatorre. Like that's a
Yeah,
super common name, but
it's
it's a
one of
cool
those
name. I would like that cool
common but
name.
not common last names.
Yeah,
It's common enough,
I
but
always
not
like
too.
that name though. I thought it was kind of cool, Delatorre. So.
Yeah, thank you. I got it from my grandpa, I guess.
Okay. Also, Delos Reyes. I never heard Delos Reyes. That's a common one too. I've
Oh,
heard a
that's
couple
I never heard
Delos
that one
Reyes. You
either.
heard that one? Okay.
No,
Yeah,
that's a new
I've heard
one.
that one.
All right, yeah. So Project Red Planning, yeah, it's a fun book. Honestly, if you like, I feel like you don't get enough. I don't see enough personally sci-fi, satire, comedy type books. So I think
Mhm.
that if that's kind of your vibe, I think you'll enjoy this book. It's a 445 page novel, but
Big
it
book.
moves fast. Like I will say, it's not a you don't waste any time really on
Okay.
any one thing throughout the book. And I always
Yeah.
appreciate when an author just when the story just moves along at a good clip and it doesn't drag in some parts. Because
Hmm.
I read too many books where there's just like things dragging in the middle. Like, what is this?
Okay.
You could have easily cut this, but no.
Yeah.
With Project Red Planet, I don't think I felt that at all. So
Okay.
this is easily a book you could finish in a couple weeks if you're that a speedy of a reader. I'm not. Well, it took me a while to finish just because I had so much other things going on. But if
Yeah.
I'd actually like focused,
It's a pretty big book.
I
So
could have had your book finished in a couple weeks easily.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think it's a great project and a great accomplishment for you personally, David. And I hope that people listening and watching will give it a chance. It is on Amazon now, and and it's you're selling it at a good price, by the way, both
Yeah.
Kindle digital
Yeah.
version and paperback.
I've gotten some sales already. So yeah, it's
Yeah, that's
pretty happy
that. There
about
you
that.
go.
So yeah. It is
And
17.99 paperback and $5 for ebook. Also, if you do the Kindle Direct, if you have that already, or the Kindle Unlimited,
yeah.
it's free actually.
Oh, is it
I
free?
guess I guess the way royalties work is that I would get paid if the per page like that people read. So if you're
Oh,
flipping
nice.
through
Oh,
a
well, there
book,
you
you
go.
actually get paid per page on that one.
Yeah, you should have made it
I
a
prefer
thousand
I prefer
page.
the royalties though. I prefer the bigger royalties if you actually buy it. So
Nice.
yeah, thank you, Adrian. It's
Yeah.
pretty
So
good. It was fun. It
yeah.
was a very difficult process for me because there was so much humor, there was so much ridiculous ideas in it, but it's definitely worth it. And I definitely wanted to. I was very inspired by Douglas Adams, and I hope I any fans of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide, I think would really like this book. Vonnegut and Terry Pratchett, definitely my influences big time. So yeah, very happy with the book and hope people like it. So
Well, good job.
thank you. Thank you.
Golf clap, golf clap. You finished a book, like I said,
Yeah.
it's
Very
always a
nice.
big accomplishment
Yeah, yeah.
to be able to do that, and especially nowadays, so many people selling AI slop on Amazon or whatever. But
Yeah.
like, this
Yeah.
was written by a human, guys. This
I
wasn't
wrote
written
this.
by an
Yeah.
AI,
This is the pre-AI age.
pre-AI
Chat
age.
GPT has only been out for what, like 2 years now or something like that? Is it something
Yeah,
like that?
something like that.
I started this way before that, never used AI for any of it.
Yeah.
So
ChatGPT is a tool. It shouldn't be the whole thing,
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not the studio, it's not the publisher,
Use it as a
it's a
piece to
tool.
help and guide you,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Unfortunately, it's going to become the whole studio for the big companies out
For
there.
some,
We're
for
already
some.
seeing hints of
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
um, I think that people are always going to want a human-made content. I think when someone finds out that it was like
Yes.
AI made or AI assisted or whatever, they're like
Mhm.
turned off by that. So
I think, yeah, a quick aside on that. But I think it's gonna be something like radio. When people said like, oh, TV is gonna kill radio.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like it never went away and it's just blown up with now when there's podcasts, we're doing one. Like you can still
yeah.
listen to audiobooks,
I mean,
radio.
terrestrial radio is effectively just dead, but I get what you're saying. I get the
I mean,
spirit of
like,
what you're saying.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Podcasting is the new radio. That's the thing,
Right,
right?
right. It'll
Uh,
slightly change and there'll always be some new content that
yeah.
humans will always be involved with. So
Terrestrial radio is just ads. That's all it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's ads for your local,
Oh yeah. That is it.
dealerships and
Right, right.
and
Yeah.
law offices of
Maybe that'll be
education.
AI. Maybe AI will just generate endless ads. It'll just be like the ad generator with like super
What we need is a chat GPT lawyer,
a lawyer.
like a lawyer in some kind of corporeal form,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
a body, like an
Maybe
android type of body.
that could
And
help
it's
speed up
cheaper
the
than a real
process.
lawyer because an
That's
Android
true.
lawyer doesn't have to go to school, doesn't have
That's
loans
true.
to pay back.
Yeah.
That's where AI is really going to come in and shine, I think.
Maybe with like disputes. Yeah. Maybe that'll help.
I read the other day that it's at the point now where it can pass the bar exam.
Okay. I believe that.
So,
Yeah.
uh, I believe it too,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Pretty crazy.
But hey, we're talking about books, we're talking about writing, and now we're
Yes.
switching gears to writing. And I think we're talking about how do we come up with ideas? Now, you mentioned yours earlier with
Yeah.
Project Red
Yeah. Come
Planet.
up with Red Planet. Yeah.
Yeah,
What are how do you come up with your ideas, Adrian? How do you
I
brainstorm? Are
I
you a
subscribe
brainstorm?
to the shower theory.
The
I come up
shower
my
theory.
with my
Okay.
best ideas when I'm in the shower.
Okay. Okay.
And by the way, there's a science to this. It's
Yeah.
because it's one of the few times throughout the day where you're not on a screen, you're not
Mm,
getting outside,
mm.
what's it called?
Outside influence
Stimulation.
or external
I
influence,
mean,
kind
sure, some
of.
people
Okay.
play music in the shower. I don't do
Yeah.
that. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
silly,
You
but
can
whatever,
sing
to
your
each
own
their own.
songs in the shower then.
So for me, it's the only time throughout the day when I'm not on the phone or
Okay.
watching or listening. So
Yeah.
like my mind has time to
Okay.
play
Yeah. Yeah.
in this sort of void,
Yeah. Yeah.
this space that doesn't have a physical form, right?
You're a shower
And
guy. Okay. Interesting.
yeah, so honestly, and I'm being serious. Some of my best
Yeah.
ideas do come in the shower. Sometimes,
Okay.
if I already have an idea and I
Mm,
don't know what to like do with that idea in
mm,
some aspect, whether it's a scene I'm writing or dialogue or what have you,
mm.
and if I
Yeah.
think about it in the shower, it kind of like helps
Clicks
jog
on.
my creative muscles a little bit. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And it solves my creative issues. So
Yeah.
for me, it's the shower. And on
Okay.
the rare occasion that I work out, because when I do work out, when I do go to the gym,
Mm.
um, when your body is moving and you're sweating and the blood is
Yeah.
flowing, I feel like the blood is also flowing. Well, the blood is
Yeah.
always flowing to your brain. I
Right.
hope it
Right.
is, otherwise
Going
you're dead.
everywhere.
But
Yeah.
I feel like that kicks something off creatively in my mind, and
Okay.
I get ideas that way. And then
Yeah.
the other way for me to get ideas or be inspired is everyday stuff, things I see on TV and the news, on the
Mm.
internet.
Hmm.
I say TV like I actually watch TV. You know what I mean? Like not
Yeah.
traditional
Yeah.
TV, but yeah,
Or
sometimes
even just
inspiration
movies,
just
right?
comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
could be eating a sandwich and oh, what about this idea?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Uh, does that
What
sound
about
about right? Do you ever have
yeah.
any of that?
Yeah, yeah, like that'd be so much like people watching. What about like people watching when you're out in public and you happen to be like have a moment and you're like, oh, what's this person doing? And then like just an interesting moment or some weird interaction that strangers are having that can be like a character that you think of.
Yeah, I was driving this morning and there was a guy on the shoulder on the on-ramp to get on the freeway, and he
Hmm.
was I don't know if he was listening to music or what, or if he was on something, but he was like he was gesticulating. Is that the
Okay.
right word? Where
Yeah,
you're like,
gesticulating. Yeah,
with his arms and his hands, and
yeah.
he was just like, I think he was listening to music, but I
Okay.
was watching him, and I was like, see,
It's very good.
I don't have that kind of confidence. I couldn't do it. I would have to be on drugs to be like,
To
he's
do
kind of like
that.
dancing a little bit.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, see, I don't have that kind of confidence. So
Okay.
people watching is interesting. I don't know that it inspires stories, but
Okay.
it is an interesting thing to just sit, like when you
Yeah.
go to
Yeah.
Vegas or you go to Disneyland or you go to anywhere where there's lots of people and you're just like,
Oh
oh,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
does that jog something in your mind? Does that get the creative juices flowing for you? Is that what you're saying?
as far as people watching a little bit more when I was younger, the older you get, the more you don't really need it as much because you've seen kind of just about everything at this
I
point.
mean,
But
as a teacher, you
I,
probably see a lot of interesting things.
yeah, yeah, especially with kids, kids being goofballs and stuff like that. That's kind
Right.
of fun. Um, but I would say the shower, going back to the shower real quick. Yeah, I have a lot of good ideas in the shower as well. I think one thing with the shower is, as you said, like you don't have a screen, but also like especially if you have like a nice warm shower, it's just very relaxing. It puts your mind to this like
Yeah.
very zen state of like peace and like calm. And then like you can just like really have like, oh, this idea, this is what it is, And
Yeah.
you're not really thinking about it too much. You're just kind of relaxed and like calm and it like de-stresses you.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of like the shower.
I
So,
used to think because I would hear, I forget who it was, lots of people
hmm
throughout the years I've heard say like, oh, being under certain recreational drugs inspires
hmm
creativity.
hmm
And I've never found that to be the case for me. I feel like if
hmm
anything, it hampers creativity,
I would
whether
think
it's
so, yeah.
alcohol or otherwise. I
Especially
just feel like
alcohol, yeah.
that's never inspired me creatively. It's inspired me to do other things, but not like creative things. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean?
Not to do an
Like
artistic
it'll
thing.
inspire me to I'm gonna watch a movie right now or play a
Yeah,
video game
consume
that I haven't
content. Yeah, yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that, but not
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hey, what about a story where this happens? Like,
Right, right.
alcohol's never done that for me or
Yeah.
any kind of drug. So
Um, yeah,
yeah.
shower's good. I would also say for me, I don't know about you, Adrian, but early in the morning, I've noticed when you first wake up, you are
Mm,
incredibly creative. Like that
yeah.
first groggy feeling of coming into awareness again, like, oh, I'm still
Yeah.
alive and I'm awake. You're like, oh, and then like, I'm alive, I'm awake, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like half aware.
Yeah.
That
You
is
know
a
what the
very
key to that
creative
is?
state. That is a very creative state.
I agree with you, but the
Yeah.
key is that you don't pick up your phone because then
Oh,
that throws a wrench to
well,
the whole thing.
well, guess what? Guess what I do? I pick up my phone
You
because
pick
what
up, so you do.
I
Oh, so you do. Okay,
I
okay.
go in my notes app. I was talking to you about this. I go in my notes app. I click open my notes app real quick, and I'm like half groggy, half awake. I'm like, oh, there's a really cool image. I have to write this down. I go and I write it down,
Okay.
and it gets the juices flowing for my creativity. And I'm not really thinking; it's just coming out. And I get a
Yeah.
lot of cool. That's where the new. I have a new novel idea, but that's like where some of my new ideas come. Is just like, oh, now I'm just going, and I have this character. I have this moment.
Yeah.
Us being science fiction writers, I think it helps to find those very creative moments. And I know when I first wake up, that's when like your brain is kind of like still in that half, it's almost like a dream hypnotic state in a way, because you're that
Yeah.
first like 10, 15 minutes is very like you're kind of just coming online again. It's like, oh, like that's kind of a cool creative idea. Like my brain just did that. Kind of
Yeah.
like the shower in a way. It puts in it like a meditative state. So that helps me too.
Yeah. I like to write things longhand on. I have a bunch of legal pads,
Okay.
yellow legal pads, and like
hmm
college ruled notebooks and stuff.
Okay.
And I like to write things down longhand because I feel
Okay.
like I remember the idea better and I understand it
hmm
better when I do that, as opposed to typing things out on my phone, which I do that.
hmm
Lately I've been writing stuff longhand and then I'll transfer that digitally onto my phone,
hmm
whether it's in Google
Okay.
Docs or a Notepad app, Notepad, my notes app. I don't know what I'm saying
Okay.
anymore.
Yeah, no.
But no, but for me, I think it helps me to physically write
Yeah,
stuff down
actually write it.
to
Okay.
develop
I'm
ideas.
I'm sort of a mix. Like I like writing by hand, but I found it to be really slow. So I was like faster with the notes in my phone. So then I changed to notes. And then of course I use Word, Microsoft Word and Google Docs. I'm less of a fan of doing a first draft on Microsoft Word or Google Docs. I get less in the flow when it's on a screen. So
Mm.
that's why, like for me, like the phone is kind of almost like an extension of like a pad. So I used to write a lot more in notebooks and stuff like that, but I could do it faster typing. So I like this as like an extension of the pad for me for writing.
What software did you write Project Red Planner in, by the way?
Mostly Word. That'd be mostly Word.
Okay. You kept it
Yeah.
simple. You didn't do like some fancy like Scrivener or one of those.
No, I played with that for a little while, like when, during the process of writing it. Another thing about Red Planet, which I would recommend people for this connects with brainstorming and just writing. But when I wrote the novel, like I would have each chapter in different like folders, and then I would do like different characters in different files and folders, and I had a mess of a time or reorganizing my book. I mean, you can imagine how difficult that was. Like it was kind of a nightmare at a certain point because like it also took me years to write it. So I do recommend writers don't do that. Just keep it in one file or one folder, you know. If you have your character, document, keep your character document. If you have your, manuscript document, keep that. Like I didn't do that, and I didn't know. I was too young. I was new, so I was just kind of messing with these ideas, and I had
Yeah.
to put them all together. That was a difficulty that should not have been had I known to organize myself a little bit better. So
Yeah. That's good. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos lately on like the logistics of writing a book as far as like organization and stuff.
yes,
And one method that really made me perk up was the idea of like when you write your chapters, then go back and then do a summary of each chapter. And depending
okay,
on who the POV is, highlight
yeah,
that a specific color. And then you
okay,
have a visual overview of who's in what chapter and what it's about. And like
okay.
that really helps you like mentally just like,
Yeah,
put it all
I can
together
see
in your
that.
mind. So I thought that was
Mhm.
an interesting I know you could do that in screenwriting too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um
That could
I've
help a
never
lot.
done that in screenwriting, but it could potentially work.
Hmm.
So
I
yeah,
can see
well,
that. I can see that coming back to it, like the day, like let's say you come back to like a week or two later, and then you just look at your summaries. That could probably help you quite a bit, on a
I think
manuscript
so.
where you can just quickly glance at it and be like, oh yeah, this happened. This is the main idea. This is the main idea. Like that can help you get to the next part pretty
Yeah,
good.
because that's the other thing. Like you wrote this whole book.
Hmm.
Could you remember every chapter by heart after you'd written it? Probably not, right?
Some of
After
them,
writing.
some of it, I had written so many, like the early part of the book, I had written them over so many times. I could like probably like I wouldn't say I could recite it to you, but I knew some early chapters way too much in this book. Like literally, I went over them like 30 different times in different edits, and just it was just crazy.
Yeah. How many chapters total was it? 50, I think.
53, 54 with the prologue. So
54, right. Okay, so
quite a
yeah,
bit.
there would have been no way for you to remember 54
No,
chapters.
no,
So
no.
yeah.
And then like I said, like the importance of taking breaks, even just in brainstorming. I mean, I would take weeks off here and there, but like I said, like I think after like 5, 6 years, I did take like a half a year off, I was like, I'm just done with this thing. There was even a moment where I didn't think I was gonna finish this thing. I was like, I think every writer has that where it's just like, I don't think I can finish this thing. It had gotten so big and so disorganized for a time there. I was like, I don't think I could finish this thing.
Yeah. I
But
get
it was
that.
too good, and there was too many good moments in that book for me to give it up. And so I say to writers of the future, be patient with yourself, find your process, and
Yeah.
you'll get there eventually. So
My problem is I'm good at starting stuff but not finishing it. So believe
yes,
me, I
most people
totally
are.
yeah, I totally get it. It's very easy to start a new project
Yes.
when it's like fresh and exciting.
Oh yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
it's another thing to like see it through to the
Yes.
end, and then
Hmm.
and then that's not even like that's just the beginning, like never mind the revision process. So
Right. Right.
so that's
You,
why like if
you
you go when you're gonna dedicate yourself to an idea, speaking of coming up with ideas, you really got to make sure like, oh, this is the one for now.
hmm.
Because if I drop this and move on to another idea, then I might just end up in that same cycle of starting and
Yeah.
stopping, starting.
Yeah.
So like I wanna decide like oh, this is the one, this is the one that I can see through to the end.
Yeah.
So it's not just a
Yeah, for
fly by night.
aspiring writers out there, whatever idea, however you brainstorm, yeah, whatever lights you up the most, like it's got to light you up pretty good.
Yeah,
'Cause there's going to be day there was many a day where this did not light me up, but thankfully it was it was still that idea that I couldn't let go. It was like the thing, even if I was tired of it, and you will get tired of it no matter how much you like it. But like, even if you're sick of it and tired of it after like years of working on it, like it's still an idea that like, yeah, something about that is just like that's to your core. Um, it's just something about it that you can't let go of. So that's an important point to remember that it should be something so important that you'll strangle it to death and like you'll finish it to the very end, to the bitter end, even if you love it or hate it or however it comes out. So
exactly. And and the other thing is too, and this is important, kids, but ideas are a dime a dozen. It's the
Yes.
execution that matters. You know what I
Right.
mean?
You actually have to do
That's
it.
where you make or break, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
how do you carry this thing out? Because I have tons of ideas. I probably have a
But
hundred ideas,
yeah.
but like that doesn't matter. What matters is like the execution of any given idea
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and seeing it through to the end. So I feel like the writing Project Red Planet was for you a big learning experience,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Mostly, yeah. I also learned the process of Neil Gaiman has a great line that I think going forward, this is going to be. Yeah, I still will write out of order primarily, but I'm gonna have everything in one big, it's all gonna be organized together. So that'll make it 20 times easier for me. But he has a simple one that if people just want to follow, he said you just write one word and then you write another one, and then they make sentences. You write another sentence and you keep going that until you're done.
Yeah.
And very simple. So if people don't, if you don't want to jump around, you can do that too. You can just write sentence by sentence, word by word. That's all you got to do.
I
Like
like
the next
David
sentence.
Lynch's advice on how to write a screenplay. The late David Lynch, and he always said like you have to have 87 index cards.
Okay.
Each index card is a scene, and then you write your scene on each one, from beginning to end, obviously, and you can do it
Uh-huh.
out of order if you wish, but as long as
Yeah.
you do
Have your
87
scenes.
scenes, you
Mhm.
have a screenplay. That's what a
Okay.
screenplay is. It's 87
A7 scenes.
scenes. So,
Okay.
obviously that's a very,
Simple.
it's
But
approximately a
yeah.
screenplay. It could be more, it could be less, but the idea of that I think is really important. Is the just like each card, each page, each sentence, and
Hmm.
each word.
Hmm.
Uh,
So
it's all
he
it's all
said
gonna add up.
87. So 87 scenes is a typical like movie for a screenplay.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
was his average.
like I said, it's on average. Yeah, it's probably. I'm sure some scripts are way less than that. Some scripts are
Yeah.
way more. But
Yeah. Yeah.
the idea I think is important to remember is that each individual card or scene matters, right? So
Mhm.
you just have to think of what goes on each of those 87 cards, and
Yeah.
then even once you do finish that, then it's like okay, now you got to rewrite it. Now you got to
Yeah.
do the real work. So.
Hmm. Yeah.
But anyway, well, I feel like you're out of gas, David.
I guess so. Maybe I don't know. I always end up yawning. Like, but thankfully I held off till the end there. So
You,
I'm gonna get some lunch now, I think. I finished my book. Go buy it. I'm gonna get
yeah,
some lunch.
yeah. Buy Project Red Planet. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
read it and write your own Project Red Planet.
Read,
Maybe
review,
burn this book.
rant. It's on Amazon.
Yeah,
Also,
uh,
I like my promos that burn this book because
burn
there's
this
a lot
book.
of political stuff in here people won't like. So go buy
Yeah.
it and figure it out for yourself.
Who was it? There was somebody that was like they released a movie or they said pirate this movie because I'm gonna make no money off of it whenever the studio pays me out or whatever. There was a
Yeah.
guy that did that. He was
Yeah.
like, I made a movie, it got picked up, but I basically make no money from it, so you might as well just
Oh,
pirate
okay.
it
Well,
because
I always think of I think back to System of a Down. One of their albums was called "Steal This Album," and
oh
so I
right,
just
right, right,
in my
right,
mind
yeah.
I had that in my mind. I was like, "Steal this album," like "Steal this book, burn this book, whatever."
Yeah.
Pretty
Did you ever
funny.
hear this is completely off topic. Did you ever hear the ridiculous someone did the math like if Bill Gates were to come upon a pile of cash on the floor, it would cost him more money to take the time to bend down and pick it up than if he just
Oh,
left it there
you just left it there.
because he's
Yeah,
just
I
so
can believe
rich and he makes
so
so
rich.
much
Yeah,
like
yeah,
what he would have made in that time it took for him to bend
yeah.
down and pick up $1,000 of cash or whatever wouldn't have been worth.
No, yeah. I mean, he's all invested in the stock market, so he's all good. Yeah.
All righty
Yep.
then. Well, hey, this has been a good, fun episode to discuss
Yep.
Project Red Planet and writing in general.
Yep.
Check us out. We're on YouTube now. We have a YouTube channel, the
Yep. Book
Book Brothers
Brothers. But
Podcast on YouTube, and also YouTube Music.
yes.
So if you used to listen to us on the now dead Google Podcasts app,
Mm,
know that you can listen to all your podcasts on YouTube Music. So check
yep.
us out on there. And yeah, that's it for me. Anything else you wanted to add, David, before we sign
Uh,
off here?
just buy the book, review it, and tell your friends all about it. That's all I gotta say.